What's good, beautiful people? I hope you're having a fantastic day so far. Today, I want to talk about how do you transition from employment to self employment, especially if you're going down the contracting or consulting route. But specifically, I want to talk about finances because whether we like it or not, money makes the world go around, okay? And we all need more money in our lives. Now, it's not that we're chasing money, we're chasing this sense of freedom. Now, is contracting and consulting going to do that? No, it's not. I don't believe it is. However, it does give you a leg up. I've always said this. I believe that I'm in phase two of my sort of like major plan when it comes to moving forward. And phase three is full fledged, I'm going to say mature entrepreneurship. But for now, I'm sort of like spreading my wings and I'm very comfortable within this whole contracting and consulting space. And of course, I'm given the opportunity to share my learnings with people like yourself and others who may be interested, or actually we're in the same space. And actually, it's nice to have that camaraderie ship as well. So what am I talking about when it comes to finances? Well, for me, really and truly, when it comes to this stuff, it's a personal development journey. You have to be clear or have an idea of the type of person that you want to become. If you don't know what that looks like, it's going to be very difficult for you to make any sort of decisions. What do I mean by this? If you're clear about the sort of person that you want to become and the sort of lifestyle that you want to have, then when it comes to financial planning and goals, it just becomes a bit clearer because you know what you want to prioritize and what you don't want to prioritize. So bear that in mind. You can start this process, but it may be redundant if you don't necessarily focus on who you need to be for yourself. You owe yourself that much. I remember I did this exercise 7 to 8 years ago, okay? And this is when I first started, thinking about money and how to manage it and all that kind of stuff there. And I realized that a lot of my money essentially went on either big holidays, one or two in that year, travel, I had to travel, and food. Okay, and I love food. So with that in mind, it meant that I was more conscious with how I was managing my habits and stuff. I don't know all the terms and all this kind of stuff there. I'm just going to say what I've done, so hopefully it helps you. And of course, you've probably done some of this stuff yourself, but again, it's just a reminder and it raises awareness as well. So the first thing is, number one, I have to get a really good idea of what's in my bank account. Let's be very straight about it. What comes in and what comes out. So how much money are you making right now? Let's say, for example, you're making £60,000 a year. Okay, that's gross. Maybe net, that looks more like £35,000. Okay, because of taxes and all that kind of jazz there. So you're making, I don't know, I'm making this up, 3 grand a month or whatever it may be. Cool. Out of that, how much is attributed to expenses and what type of expenses? So of course you're going to have like core expenses. This is going to be rent or your mortgage or black tax as they call it. Okay. This is also going to be things like bills, and there's also going to be things like subscriptions. Now we're not talking about the ad hoc stuff yet, but we just need to be clear about what does that look like on a monthly basis. If there are annual payments, maybe you want to turn those into monthly payments so you know that you're putting money away for those annual payments as well. Now it does help if you do have expenses that come out at one end of the month. So this is what I like to do. It typically comes out either at the end of the month or at the beginning of the month. So I know for a week or two, this is when my expenses are coming out. Not everybody engineers it that way and it's not always perfect. But again, it allows me to manage my income and finances that way. Of course, if you can make changes to when things come out, definitely do that stuff. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing related to that, especially with the expenses side, is to be clear about what are your patterns. So I realized when I did an export, so before there was Money Dashboard or Money Hub, I think is now, which does not replace Money Dashboard. I'm so upset that that's gone. They need to bring something like that back. If you know of any sort of like apps like Money Dashboard and that are good to that level, please let me know. I beg you. Let me know. Anyway, so in addition to that, I picked up themes. So before I did all that stuff, integrating it with all these apps, I used to export it from my bank. And I used to go on Excel and I used to categorize what different sort of like expenses I had. But then I realized there were seasonal things. So for whatever reason, September and October was a time where it became really difficult for me. There were challenges that came my way. It was an unexpected bill, or it had to be an unexpected sort of like a travel cost, or maybe something needs to be replaced, but it was always happening around that time. Okay. Whereas actually I felt richer around the March and April times because I was recovering from whatever happened in October or September. I realized that between October and March, there was a lot of family activities and stuff, and therefore it meant that I was spending more. So again, these things became conscious, and I understood that actually there is a better way of managing this stuff. So it meant that when it came to sort of managing my expenses, I would sit down with my wife and would have a conversation every single month and just go through our stuff. And then each quarter there was more of a bigger thing, and each year it was even bigger. Okay, we looked at our goals, this, that, all of it was intertwined. But the point being made is we started off looking at income and expenses, and then we sort of like analyze it to understand what those themes are so we could change behavior. And I would tell her precisely what it was so she could stop me from spending unnecessarily. But sometimes she would encourage me because she wants to eat herself. So bear that in mind. I've got an embarrassing number in terms of how many times I ordered delivery last year. I'm not even going to say it, but it's more than the number of weeks in a year. Anyway, moving forward, the point we made is you start off with that. Then you start to decide, okay, cool. If I don't have an emergency fund, or if I've got bills, or not even bills, debts to pay, like a credit card or a loan, how do I tackle these stuff? Now, the question is, do you sort of like pay for the credit card / loan and save at the same time and invest? You're spreading yourself thin, so you need to decide what you want to do, especially if you're thinking about transitioning into contracting, consulting, your own business. For me personally, I aggressively pay off any credit cards or loans first. And I mean aggressive, even if it means like my quality of life for like 2 months is rubbish. But that's my approach. Doesn't mean you need to take that approach. That's just what I do because I like to nip it in the bud as quickly as possible. Okay. Now, does it mean that I don't have enough chance or time to sort of like catch up? It has meant that in the past, not lately though. So you have to think to yourself, does that make sense for you, or do I need to spread it out a bit more? Okay. Then you need to say, okay, cool. I can invest if I want to, but maybe I just want to make sure that I have, 3 to 6 month emergency fund. So if your expenses are £500, okay, just to exist, then of course you need at least £3,000. And of course that doesn't account for going out and stuff. And of course we're humans of habit. So maybe you want to add an additional 50% on top of what your expenses are. Okay. So really that means, I can't do the maths, but that would be 250, 500. Then we've got 1,000. So an extra £2,000. I don't know. Whatever the amount is, £1,500, an extra £1,500. So you would need to save £4,500. Okay. So you need to have an idea of what that looks like, so you can still have the quality of that you life to a certain level, okay, not an extravagant level, but also cover your expenses as well. And you want to review this stuff, and then if you've got the sort of like 3 to 6 month emergency fund, then maybe you can start thinking about investing in something like the S&P 500 or having a mixed portfolio. If you know about the sort of like exchange traded funds, so ETFs, or index funds such as the S&P 500, or stocks that you want to invest in. Most people now, I say most people, but I would imagine, and I'm not a financial advisor, you can speak to one, that most people now are using Trading 212 or Hargreaves and Lansdowne, which requires fees, to invest in something like the S&P 500. Also, maybe looking at some sort of tech ETF or stock because it's high growth at the moment because everyone's talking about AI and cybersecurity and blockchain and all that kind of stuff there. And maybe some other different types of funds as well. But you have to have a bit of a plan for that. Don't just do it. Well, you can if you want to, but you need to decide, are you looking for growth in your index funds? Okay, so that's accumulation. Or are you looking for additional income, which is distribution? Again, there's all this talk about this stuff. You can do some more research about that. But this is just so you have an idea. Okay, so you're thinking about what sort of like is coming in, what's coming out, what do you need to pay for, what do you need to save, the amount, and do you want to contribute to any sort of like investing as well? So these are all things to sort of like really think about. For me, when it comes to paying off my loans or credit cards in the past, it really comes down to sometimes I mix it up. Sometimes I tackle the biggest first because I'm like, I just want that out the way. But for most people, you may want to target the smallest first in terms of amount, or you may want to target the one that has the highest interest first and then do it that way. There are so many different ways to do it, and you can look at the technical terms of what that's called as well. The next thing is, well, it says here, I've got here, looking at ways you can explore diverse income streams. I wouldn't push that narrative heavy right now, if I'm honest with you. If you are focusing on consulting or contracting and you haven't moved yet, okay, and you've assessed your financial situation, it comes back to the original question of who do you want to become? What do you want to be known for? What specific problem do you want to solve? And so when it comes to the additional streams of income, there's no point forcing that right now unless it makes sense. So if career coaching makes sense aligned to what you want to do, then yeah, explore career coaching. Why not? If it makes sense to do audits or advisory for different types of businesses because you've had experience within, I don't know, investment banking or whatever it may be, I'm just throwing words out there, then yeah, explore that idea because it's in alignment to the theme of the problem that you're trying to solve. And that could turn into something. And so yes, explore that stuff and definitely think about if it makes sense. For me personally, I've always explored the idea of coaching and mentoring, and it hasn't just been an idea, it's something that I do. And so this is why I still do the contracting and consulting, and I also do the coaching and mentoring and advisory as well. And the question is, why don't I just focus on that stuff? Because it's not just a simple thing to set up. Of course, the model is simple, but I had to go on a journey of discovery of understanding what do I want to focus on. Now, of course, 70 odd to 75% of the income comes purely from the consulting, okay? And in itself, you could argue I'm doing a lot of the coaching stuff anyway, so it makes sense to extend that to those who are not just within the B2B space. But that's for me specifically. You may think about becoming a non-executive director, okay? Because you believe that you want to actually start a business at some point and you want to understand how that type of business works at an executive level. What a powerful thing to do. So you go onto a recruitment board that specifies, non-executive directors, and you focus on developing that skill set over the next year to 3 years, 5 years, 6 years, whatever it may be, whilst making money, whilst making additional income. Potentially, actually, you don't want to go full-time with contracting or consulting. You just want to do it on the side. That is possible too. Yes, far and few, but it's possible too. And so these are the ways you can start to diversify your income, and you can start thinking about, okay, do I want this to go in a certain savings? Do I want this to go into my investments? Do I want this to go to my mortgage? You can start thinking about life design in that way. The next thing is you want to be able to plan for the unexpected. Now, if you're really, really rich, you may not believe in insurance, but for all of the other stragglers like myself, insurance is a thing that makes sense, okay? So you want to look at things like contents insurance, for anything that goes wrong within a property, buildings insurance. You want to look at, again, professional indemnity and public liability insurance when you're dealing with different types of professionals. If you are setting up your own business or becoming an outside IR35 contractor, you want to look at things like life insurance and health insurance, and that makes more sense specifically if you're with a partner or have kids. Okay, critical illness. What does your policy look like currently at work when it comes to health? What does the maternity cover look like? What does your pension look like? Do you have a self-invested private pension where essentially you are investing in certain types of assets, or are you focusing on state pension if you're applicable towards that? What does that look like if you become a contractor or a consultant? Okay, it means you become a bit more independent in some of the stuff, but this stuff becomes more important. Income protection. Do you have any form of income protection that is protecting you? All of this stuff is super, super important. Car insurance. Like, yes, it may look like you're racking up a lot, but if something happens, I'm telling you, you're going to wish that you had some of those insurances. Now, I have some of my money parted within Halifax, and they have something known as Ultimate Reward. Some of you guys will know this already. I paid a £15 a month or £17.99 a month or whatever it may be for their package of insurance, which covers things like travel insurance, phone insurance, contents insurance, medical cover. I've used all of it. I'm telling you. And so just really think about what makes sense for you specifically when it comes to some of these contingencies. Again, this is really to edify the point, okay? This is kind of related. Cut the unnecessary expenses. Now, I'm saying this with a caveat. You need to decide, how hard you want to go. What do I mean? If you want to go so hard where it means you're impacting on enjoyment, then do it. Some people talking about FIRE. Is it financial independence, retire early, or something like that? Okay. If you're like, forget that, life is to be lived still, then don't go down the FIRE route. But also don't be going to, hey, don't bash me for this, yeah. Afro Nation, Dirty December in Ghana, KKK, Dubai, and all this. You need to chill. Because if your pocket is not supporting this, then my friend, you need to stop that nonsense. I'm telling you, you need to stop that nonsense. Now, of course, if your pockets can allow you to do that and you've calculated it and it makes sense, bearing in mind things can happen, then by all means, enjoyment, my friend. But if you're going into this contracting space with no contingency, no budgets, no planning, no savings, none of that stuff, no insurances, yeah, you need to slow down your roll and think carefully, I'm telling you, about what you're doing. Because if you're in a situation where you've got no contingency, my friend, it's difficult, especially in the UK. So be sensible. You have to be a professional, sensible individual that's practical and has the right type of approach for your future self. Okay. The other thing I want to say is, it's also important to make sure that you're mentally prepared for this and you're set up. Is there anything else financially that you need to do? Okay. Like, do you have to consider like software expenses or sort of like office expenses or travel expenses? All of that kind of stuff. Like, how are you going to manage your money? Like, for me personally, I have a good relationship with the accounting firm that I use. And essentially, they will send me my drawing figure, which highlights the VAT liability, what they've calculated, corporate tax. What else would they talk about? They'll always reference personal tax and say it's my responsibility, what amount of money I can take out, etc., etc. And I keep my own spreadsheet. That is linked to any invoices that I have, obviously date, number, all of that kind of jazz, and how much money I take out of the business for myself as a form of dividends, making sure that I put aside, let's say 10% for personal tax. Like, I'm not just gonna willy-nilly just take everything they say as gospel. Of course, I'm gonna ask questions. An accountant, yeah, I'm telling you this right now, if you've never had an accountant before and you get one because of your business or you're outside of IR35, is a great educational tool. I'm telling you. The same thing as a financial advisor or whatever they call themselves. I know there are different sort of like bands of them. They are educational by nature because they teach you not only about money, but inadvertently and indirectly about your behaviors and your habits as well. So ask questions, get them to dumb it down. If you need to, ask them if you can record the conversation and get ChatGPT to break it down for you based on the transcript. There are different ways. Hey, you can tell I've done stuff. They're like, break it down in different ways. And of course, you need to think long term. How sustainable is this? Okay. How much time are you giving for contracting and consulting? Is this just a phase in the journey? Is this something you're going to do for a little bit just to test the waters? Is this something that is going to fill the void until you get into the next thing? Is it going to fund something else? What does that look like? And with that in mind, you have to think about, okay, how am I protecting my retirement plan with a pension or pensions? Do they need to be in a pot? How am I making sure that I'm as tax efficient as possible? What are the different things you can do, such as maybe you want to pay yourself a bit of a salary for the tax-free allowance, or maybe you want to be in a situation where you put your partner on as what are they called again, a director, and you split up the dividends that way. Maybe it's a situation where you're ensuring that when it comes to business expenses, you're tracking all of that stuff and you send through your spreadsheet to your accountant at some point. I say back pay, but you can get expenses from before, provided that these expenses were taken out at the beginning of your incorporation. Sorry, I'm getting a phone call, so I don't even know if this is recording. Hopefully it's not. Hopefully it's not capturing the call as well. Anyway, so there are all of these things that you want to think about. All of these things that you want to think about when it comes to, again, your future, your long-term planning, okay? So hopefully all of this stuff makes sense. I think I've covered as much as possible. I do have a video talking about finances just in general, which talks about what I've just said, but in more detail, okay, and more nuance. But again, if there are any sort of like comments or questions that you have in mind that you want to ask me, then feel free to ask away, and I'll be looking forward to seeing your comments as well. If you want to see more videos centered around portfolio careers, contracting careers, all of that kind of stuff, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And as always, my friends, understand, reach, and expand. Peace.